Your lungs are screaming. The water presses against you from every direction. 45 units of oxygen burning away in your chest like seconds on a countdown timer. Above you, impossibly far above you, the surface shimmers with a promise of air you're not sure you'll reach. You kick harder. The seawater blurs past your mask. Your heart hammers against your ribs, and for a moment, just a moment, you wonder if this is how it ends. Drowning in an alien ocean, alone, forgotten. Then your head breaks through. The gasp that fills your lungs isn't just oxygen, it's relief, pure and desperate. The sun burns down from an unfamiliar sky, and somewhere in the distance you can hear the low, mournful call of something vast moving beneath the waves. You float there, treading water, chest heaving. You're alive, for now. At first, the ocean feels like it wants you dead. Every shadow could be teeth, every sound could be the last thing you hear. The depth stretches endlessly below you. 8,000 meters of crushing darkness that doesn't care about your tiny lungs or your fragile bones. But it doesn't. It's just deep, and you don't know how to breathe in yet. You will though. You'll learn to stop fighting the water and start moving with it. You'll learn that the things that hunt you aren't malicious, they're just hungry. Just following instincts older than your species. You'll learn that the ocean isn't your enemy. It's your home now, whether you like it or not. This is where your story begins. Not with the crash of the aurora or the hiss of your life pod's doors opening. It begins here, 40 meters down, with burning lungs and the sudden, terrible understanding that everything you thought you knew about survival is useless now. The ocean doesn't hate you, but that doesn't mean it's going to make this easy. Let me tell you what Subnautica isn't. It isn't a power fantasy. There are no guns to wield, no enemies to conquer, no leaderboards to climb. You won't build an army or level up your character or unlock devastating abilities that let you dominate the world around you. You are not the chosen one, you're not special. You're not even particularly good at staying alive. You are Riley Robinson, a maintenance chief whose biggest claim to fame was probably fixing a broken fabricator on the Aurora before everything went to hell. Now you're floating in an alien ocean with a malfunctioning life pod and 45 seconds of air in your lungs. Subnautica is a survival game, where nothing is trying to kill you on purpose. Let that sit for a moment. In a genre obsessed with zombies and raiders and monsters that exist purely to end your story, Subnautica offers something different. The things that want to eat you aren't evil, they're just hungry. The ocean that drowns you isn't malicious, it's just deep. The pressure that crushes your vehicles doesn't hate you, it's just physics. This is a game about oxygen, pressure, and time. About the way your heart hammers when you see your air supply tick down to 10 units, and the surface is still 30 meters away. About the terrible mathematics of depth and crush damage, and how far you can push your Seamoth before the hull gives way and the ocean comes pouring in. This isn't going to be a plot recap. I'm not here to walk you through every PDA log or explain why Riley's arms look weird. God knows there's enough videos about that already. Instead, this is about something quieter, something slower, something that kept me alive on days when I didn't know if I wanted to be. I've been playing Subnautica since the beginning, back when it barely ran on my laptop and I was recording cringy little Let's Plays that nobody watched. I didn't know it then, but this game would stick with me. And now, years later, I think I finally understand why. This is about the feeling of being afraid of something vast and unknowable until one day you aren't anymore. About the moment when terror transforms into curiosity, when the alien becomes familiar, when the ocean stops feeling like your enemy and starts feeling like home. It's about how Subnautica taught me that fear isn't permanent, that adaptation isn't just possible, it's inevitable, if you're patient enough and stubborn enough to keep swimming. The ocean doesn't hate you, but you're going to have to learn how to breathe in it. When Charlie Cleveland and his team at Unknown Worlds set out to make Subnautica, they made a deliberate choice to create something without guns, without traditional violence, without the comfortable rhythms of combat that define so many games. They were inspired by Minecraft's ability to throw away all traditional challenge-oriented and progression-oriented games, but they went further. They built a world where your greatest enemy isn't a boss with a health bar, it's your own panic. Because that's what Subnautica really is. It's a meditation on fear and adaptation. A study in how we react when stripped of everything familiar, and are forced to survive in an environment that operates by rules we don't understand. It's about learning to read the language of an alien ecosystem, to recognize the difference between curiosity and aggression, between territorial behavior and genuine threat. Most survival games ask you to fight back. Subnautica asks you to pay attention. The ocean doesn't hate you, but you're gonna have to learn how to breathe in it. And also, before we get into this video, I'm really happy to make this video. I fucking love Subnautica. But if you could like and subscribe just to help the channel out, it would mean the world to me. YouTube really values the view to subscriber ratio, and it uses that to figure out how to push videos. So if you've enjoyed anything so far, please help me out and subscribe. You don't have to, but I got bills to pay, man. Anyway, let's descend into Subnautica. You wake up to the sound of metal groaning and water dripping somewhere you can't see. Your lifepod 5, the PDA helpfully informs you, feels less like a rescue vessel and more like a coffin. 3 meters by 3 meters of cramped metal and failing electronics bobbing on an ocean that stretches to every horizon. The fabricator hums weakly in the corner, powered by solar cells that only work when the sun decides to cooperate. Outside, through the single porthole, alien fish drift past like living question marks. Everything is running out. Your food stores are nearly gone. Your water reserves won't last the week. The lifepod's power fluctuates with each passing cloud. And you watch the battery indicator with the devotion of a monk watching a prayer candle, knowing that when it goes out, so might you. But it's the ocean itself that terrifies you most. It doesn't end. You scan the horizon and see nothing but water meeting sky in every direction. An endless blue that swallows distance and perspective until you can't tell if that shadow is a cloud or something moving beneath the surface. The sheer scale of it presses against your mind like the pressure presses against your lungs when you dive too deep. This isn't a lake you can swim across or a river you can follow to shore. This is an entire world of water, and you are smaller than plankton. Your first dives are exercises in terror management. You clutch your standard O2 tank, 45 units of air, barely enough to reach the sea floor and back, and drop through the water column like a stone wrapped in anxiety. Every shadow could be teeth, every sound could be your death approaching. The kelp sways with an intelligence that might be wind or might be something using it for cover. Crash fish explode from their sulfur caves without warning, and you learn to read the telltale shimmer of their approach while your heart hammers against your ribs. You scan everything, not because you want to understand the ecosystem, not yet, but because scanning keeps your hands busy and your mind focused on something other than the vast emptiness pressing in from all sides. Peeperfish with their bulbous eyes, boomerangs that dart away from your presence, bladderfish that you catch and consume raw, trading hydration for the precious seconds of air they provide. Each scan adds another entry to your PDA, another small victory against the unknown. But knowledge feels fragile here, provisional. You learn that stalkers are territorial rather than actively malicious, but that doesn't make their metal teeth any less sharp when they flash past your mask. You discover that gasopods release toxic clouds when threatened, but that revelation usually comes after you're already choking on poison. The sounds are the worst part. You'll be swimming through the kelp forest, focused on gathering minerals or scanning fragments. When you hear it, something large moving in the water nearby. A deep, resonant call that travels through the liquid medium and vibrates in your chest. You freeze, hanging motionless in the water, trying to determine direction and distance from audio alone. Is it curious? Territorial? Hunting? Usually, you never find out. The sound fades, leaving you with nothing but elevated pulse and the creeping certainty that you're being watched by something you can't see. Your scanner becomes a security blanket, its blue beam a small circle of light in an ocean of uncertainty. When you point it at a reef-back leviathan for the first time, that massive, gentle giant drifting through the water like a living island, your hands shake, not from fear of the creature itself, but from the sudden understanding of scale. If something this large exists in these waters, what else is out there? What other impossibilities are swimming just beyond the range of your vision? The nights are when the loneliness hits hardest. Your life pod rocks gently on the surface while alien constellations wheel overhead. And you realize that no one knows where you are. No one is coming. The Sunbeam's rescue attempt ended in a column of fire and debris, and now there's just you and 45 units of air in an ocean full of things that have been living here far longer than you've been breathing. At first, I thought everything down here wanted me gone. The stalkers with their aggressive circling, the crash fish with their suicidal explosions, the way the very water seemed to resist my presence. Fighting every kick, stealing my breath, pulling me down towards depths where the pressure would turn my bones to powder. But it turns out I was wrong. It turns out I just didn't know how to exist there yet. The ocean wasn't trying to kill me any more than gravity is trying to kill me when I trip. It was just being itself. Vast, indifferent, operating according to rules I hadn't learned yet. The stalkers weren't malicious, they were protecting their territory. The crash fish weren't vindictive, they were following million-year-old instincts about nest defense. Even the pressure and the darkness weren't personal attacks, they were just physics. I was the alien here. I was the intruder stumbling through someone else's home, tracking mud on the carpet and knocking over furniture because I couldn't see properly in the dark. The ocean didn't hate me. I just hadn't learned its language yet. The transformation doesn't happen all at once. There's no single moment when the terror evaporates and leaves you fearless. Instead, it's a series of small victories, tiny accommodations between you and the ocean. Like learning to trust a wild animal that's decided you're not worth eating. It starts with your first real O2 tank, the high-capacity version that gives you 75 units instead of 45. Those extra 30 seconds sound insignificant until you're 40 meters down and your air supply is bleeding away like sand through an hourglass. That additional buffer transforms everything. Suddenly you can explore the kelp forest without constantly calculating return times. You can hover near a stalker long enough to actually observe its behavior instead of just fleeing. You can descend to the grassy plateaus and watch the sand sharks glide through their territory with something approaching scientific curiosity rather than pure terror. The numbers matter, but it's more than that. Each upgrade, the fins that let you swim faster, the rebreather that cancels depth penalties, the compass that helps you navigate. It isn't just improving your capabilities, they're building trust. Trust in your equipment, trust in your growing knowledge of the ecosystem. And slowly and possibly, trust in the ocean itself. Your first base is a revelation. You've been living out of LifePod 5 for weeks, that cramped metal cylinder that rocks with every wave and groans under every storm. But when you finally gather enough materials to construct a simple tube and hatch 20 meters down in the safe shallows, everything changes. The moment you swim through that airlock and hear the rush of atmosphere filling the chamber, you understand something fundamental about belonging. This isn't just shelter, it's a foothold. A place where you can stand still without worrying about oxygen consumption. Where you can watch the ocean instead of being watched by it. Through the transparent aluminum walls, you see peepers drifting past in their endless patrol routes. Gasopods floating like living balloons. The kelp swaying in currents you're finally beginning to read and understand. From inside your base, the ocean doesn't look threatening anymore. It looks alive, purposeful, beautiful even. You expand the base gradually, a storage room here, fabricated there. Solar panels that catch the alien sun and transform it into power for your growing sanctuary. Each addition makes you feel less like a refugee and more like a resident. The fish start to recognize you, swimming closer to your windows with what you choose to interpret as curiosity rather than hunger. But it's the reef banks that change everything. You're swimming at depth, maybe 60 meters down, when you hear them for the first time. Not the sudden heart-stopping roar of a predator, but something else. A low, harmonic pulse that travels through the water like whale song. You follow the sound, past some fragmenting metal of some wreck, until you see them. Reefback leviathans, massive, gentle creatures the size of city blocks, drifting through the water with the unhurried grace of living continents. Their backs are covered in coral growths and barnacle-like organisms, entire ecosystems making their homes on these wandering islands. And they're singing. The sound vibrates through your body, harmonic frequencies that seem designed not to communicate, but simply to exist, to mark the passage of these ancient beings through their domain. You hover there, suspended in the water column, and listen. You listen to their voices echo through the depths. And for the first time since the aurora went down, You don't feel small, you feel connected. This is when the fear stops being fear and becomes something else entirely. Not fearlessness, the ocean is still full of things that can kill you without trying, but a kind of respectful caution. The way you might approach a sleeping lion, aware of the danger, but no longer assuming malicious intent. You start taking risks that would have been unthinkable in those first terrifying days. You swim at night, watching bioluminescent plankton. You approach stalkers deliberately, studying their behavior patterns, learning to read their body language. When one grabs a piece of metal and shakes it aggressively, you no longer see a monster. You see play behavior, the oceanic equivalent of a dog with a chew toy. Subnautica becomes a game about trust. Turns out that gasopods won't release their poison clouds unless you threaten them. Trust that the bone sharks are territorial rather than actively malevolent. Trust that if you can learn the rules of this place, really learn them, not just memorize them, you can find a way to coexist with its inhabitant. The ocean starts to feel less like a hostile environment and more like a vast, complex community that you're slowly being accepted into. Even the sounds stop being sources of panic and become navigation aids, warning systems, the pulse and rhythm of an alien ecosystem going about its daily business. It's not that the ocean becomes safe per se. A Reaper Leviathan will still grab your sea moth and shake it like a toy if you're careless enough to stray into its territory. The pressure will still crush your hull if you dive beyond your vehicle's limits. The darkness will still hide things that can end your story in seconds. But you become a part of it. You learn to swim with the currents instead of fighting them. To recognize the difference between the territorial roar of a bone shark and the haunting shriek of a Reaper Leviathan. To read the thermal layers and understand why certain fish congregate at specific depths. You start thinking in 3 dimensions, navigating by landmarks that exist above, below, and around you rather than just ahead and behind. Most importantly, you learn to listen. The ocean is constantly talking. Through the songs of the reefbacks, the clicks and calls of its inhabitants, the subtle changes in current and temperature that indicate the presence of thermal vent or the presence of danger. You just had to learn its language. And once you do, once you stop trying to impose your surface dweller logic on this alien realm and start accepting it on your own terms, something wonderful happens. You stop being afraid of drowning in the ocean. You start being afraid of having to leave it. You learn to listen to the ocean. And in return, it shows you that survival is possible. Not guaranteed, not easy, but possible. And for the first time, it feels like maybe, just maybe, you'll be okay. I need to tell you something. I've been making videos about games for a while now. Kenshi and its endless cycles of slavery and violence. Project Zomboid and the inevitable decay of everything you build. The long dark and the cold mathematics of starvation in an indifferent wilderness. I've become known, apparently, for essays about suffering, about entropy, about the beautiful futility of trying to survive in worlds that want you dead. But Subnautica was the first. Back in 2018, when I was just starting to figure out what YouTube even was, I made a series of Let's Play videos about this game. They were, well, let me show you.
Hello guys, welcome to Subnautica! And we're gonna...
I was very young. Those videos got maybe 50 views each. 4 episodes of squeaky-voiced commentary over what was essentially a PowerPoint presentation because my PC could barely run the game at 10 frames per second. The audio was recorded on what sounded like a built-in laptop microphone. I had no idea what I was doing with editing or pacing or any of the things that make a video watchable. The series died after 4 episodes because I ran out of things to say, and no one was watching anyway. Actually, that's not entirely true. Some people were watching, specifically half my school, who found the videos and made sure I knew exactly how terrible they thought they were. Nothing quite like having your creative aspirations become the subject of canteen mockery to teach you about the gap between ambition and execution. I privated those videos eventually. Not because I was ashamed of loving the game, but because I was ashamed of how badly I'd failed to convey why it mattered. The comment sections were mostly empty anyway. Maybe a nice video from someone being polite, maybe nothing at all. but the silence felt worse than criticism. At least with hate comments, you know someone cared enough to have an opinion. With silence, you just know you failed to matter at all. But I kept playing the game, even when my channel wasn't growing, even when I was making videos about other things that performed better. I kept returning to Planet 4546b. There was something about that ocean, about the way it made me feel small and vast at the same time, that I just couldn't shake. While other games demanded my attention through combat and progression systems and achievement unlocks, Subnautica just kind of existed, patient, beautiful, waiting for me to come home. I should probably mention that I didn't exactly acquire the game through legitimate means back then. Look, I was young, broke, and desperate to experience something that everyone was talking about. It wasn't until years later, when I actually had disposable income, that I bought it properly. Consider this my public confession and apology to Unknown Worlds Entertainment. Your game was so good that even my pirated copy managed to change my life, and you absolutely deserved every penny I eventually gave you. But it became my secret, my private refuge of sorts. The game I'd load up late at night when I needed to remember what wonder felt like, when the world felt too small and too harsh and too ready to judge everything I tried to create. In those dark hours, I dive beneath the waves of an alien ocean and remember that there were still places where curiosity mattered more than confidence, where paying attention was more valuable than being loud. There were moments in this game that hit me way harder than they should have, like the time I had to leave my cuttlefish behind. I'll come back to that. Funny thing, the first real conversation I ever had with my girlfriend was about this game, back in year 8. I was fat, anxious, couldn't talk to anyone, and for some reason we ended up talking about Subnauticas, about reef bags, fear, the ocean. I didn't know what that moment meant. I just knew Subnautica made the world feel a little bigger. And for the first time in my life, I didn't want to run from it. Years passed, my videos got better. I found my voice talking about darker games, harsher worlds. I built an audience that came to expect analysis of systems designed to break you down, to wear away your hope until only stubborn determination remained. And that's fine. Those games have important things to say about persistence and meaning in the face of inevitable loss. But this video is different. This one isn't about dying, it's about learning how to stay. Creating this essay has been something I didn't expect. An emotional release, a moment of calm after years of exploring digital worlds that punish kindness and crush optimism. And to be honest, I don't really care how this video performs. Obviously, I'd prefer if it does better, but creating this video was sort of an emotional release for me, an escape from the, quite frankly, quite draining topics I've been covering recently. But returning to Subnautica now, with everything I've learned about game design and narrative structure, and the way interactive media can make us feel things we can't quite name, I understand why I kept coming back. It wasn't just the ocean. It was the promise that the ocean represented. Most games teach us that growth comes through conflict. You get stronger by defeating enemies, by conquering territories, by imposing your will on hostile environments until they submit to your superior firepower. Subnautica suggests something different. It suggests that maybe the most profound kind of growth comes not from fighting your environment, but from learning to understand it, from finding ways to coexist with things that are larger and older and more complex than you'll ever be. This game taught me that adaptation isn't surrender, that paying attention isn't weakness, that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop fighting long enough to listen to what the world is trying to tell you. And now, sitting here writing about it years later, I realize this video represents something of a full circle. Those terrible videos from 2018 were me trying to share something I loved with a world that wasn't ready to listen yet. This essay is me trying to do the same thing, but with better microphones and the vocabulary to explain why that love was worth holding on to. Subnautica never stopped being beautiful. It never stopped being meaningful. It just waited, patient as the ocean itself, for me to develop the skills to do it justice. The ocean doesn't hate you, and sometimes, if you're very lucky and very patient, it teaches you that you don't have to hate yourself either. And maybe that's the best thing that Subnautica taught me. Now we get into the patented Not Saber thematic breakdown, so have fun. Most games treat fear as a problem to be solved. They give you bigger guns, stronger armor, more powerful abilities until you can face down whatever once terrified you and laugh. The monster that made you wet yourself in the tutorial becomes a trivial annoyance by the endgame. Fear is temporary, whereas power is permanent. Subnautica rejects this entirely. A Reaper Leviathan will kill you just as efficiently on hour 1 as it will on hour 100. Your Seamoth still crumples like tissue paper if a Ghost Leviathan decides it doesn't like the color. The Cyclops, your mobile base and greatest achievement, can still be reduced to scrap metal by things that were hunting these waters long before you arrived and will continue hunting them long after you're gone. But you stop being afraid of them. Not because they've become less dangerous, they haven't. You stop being afraid because you've learned the difference between danger and malice, between threat and hatred. That Reaper Leviathan patrolling the Aurora's crash site isn't lurking there specifically to ruin your day. It's hunting, following territorial instincts encoded in its DNA across millions of years of evolution. The Ghost Leviathans that guard the crater's edge aren't vindictive gatekeepers. They're the ocean's immune system responding to an intrusion in the only way they know how. Understanding this changes everything. Fear transforms from a wall into a tool. When you hear that bone-deep roar echoing through the water, your first thought isn't, "I'm going to die." It's, "Where is that coming from and how do I avoid it?" When your sonar picks up something massive moving in the darkness below, you don't panic anymore, you pay attention. You learn to read the acoustic landscape the way a bird reads thermal currents or a wolf reads scent trails. The game teaches you that fear has information embedded in it. The way your heart rate spikes when you enter certain biomes. The subtle shift in ambient sound when a predator enters your vicinity. The barely visible distortion in the water that means something large is moving just beyond your visual range. Fear becomes data, and data becomes survival. But more than that, you learn that courage isn't necessarily the absence of fear. It's proceeding in spite of it. Every dive into the deep zone is an act of calculated bravery. You know the crab squids down there can EMP your vehicles. You know the ampules can electrocute you through your hull. You know that if something goes wrong at 600 meters depth, rescue isn't coming. But you go anyway because knowledge is more valuable than safety and understanding is worth the risk. This is perhaps Subnautica's most profound lesson. Fear is not your enemy. Fear is information wearing a disguise. It tells you where the boundaries are, where the real dangers lie, where you need to pay closer attention. The goal isn't to eliminate fear, but to metabolize it, to transform it from paralysis into awareness. The ocean remains dangerous, but danger isn't personal. It just is. And once you understand that, once you really internalize it, the fear doesn't go away. It becomes something else. Respect, caution, the healthy wariness of someone who's learned to read the signs and navigate accordingly. You still avoid Reaper territory when you can. But when you can't, when the route to your objective takes you through their hunting grounds, you don't turn back. You plan, you prepare, you listen for their calls and watch for their silhouettes, and move with the careful deliberation of someone who understands exactly what they're dealing with. Fear taught you to survive, but learning to work within fear instead of against it, that's what taught you to live. Open your typical survival game and you'll find experience points, skill trees, level ups, power progression systems designed to make you feel like you're climbing some cosmic ladder of badassery. You start weak and vulnerable, and through combat and grinding and the accumulation of better gear, you become strong enough to dominate the world that once threatened you. Subnautica has none of this. Riley Robinson doesn't level up, he doesn't gain hit points or unlock special abilities, or develop resistance to damage through repeated exposure. The man who crashes on planet 4546b is functionally identical to the man who eventually escapes it, at least in terms of raw capability. He can swim at the same speed, hold his breath for the same duration, take the same amount of damage before his health depletes. And yet, by the end, he's capable of things that would have been unimaginable in those first hours. He can navigate the deepest trenches of an alien ocean. He can construct vehicles capable of withstanding crushing pressures and temperatures that would melt steel. He can read the behavioral patterns of Leviathan-class organisms and predict their movements with enough accuracy to swim safely through their territory. How? The answer is tools, knowledge, and patience. Progress in Subnautica isn't about becoming more powerful, it's about becoming more capable. The high-capacity O2 tank doesn't make you stronger, it extends your operational range. The Seamoth doesn't make you a better fighter, it makes you faster and more maneuverable. The Cyclops doesn't turn you into a submarine warfare specialist, it gives you a mobile base that can sustain you in environments where your biology simply can't function. I mean, the closest thing to making you more powerful is the prawn suit, and that'll still be ripped in half by a fucking sea emperor given half a chance. Each upgrade solves a specific problem without fundamentally changing who you are. The rebreather cancels depth pressure penalties, allowing you to explore deeper areas without burning through oxygen faster. The radiation suit protects you from the Aurora's leaking reactor, opening up previously inaccessible areas for exploration. The prawn suit gives you the durability to explore the lava zone where the water temperature alone would cook you in seconds. But notice what none of these upgrades do. They don't make you more combat effective. The prawn suit has arms that can punch, but they're designed for resource gathering and traversal, not warfare. The Seamoth has no weapon systems. I mean, it has the torpedoes, but they're not really that effective. Even the mighty Cyclops, a submarine the size of a small building, can't fight back beyond an electricity discharge system. It can only really run, hide, or endure. This is intentional. Subnautica's vision of progress is fundamentally non-violent. You don't grow by conquering your environment. You grow by learning to work within its constraints. You don't defeat the ocean, you negotiate with it. Every tool you craft, every vehicle you build, every base you construct is an accommodation between your needs and the ocean's rules. The scanner is perhaps the purest expression of this philosophy. It doesn't help you fight anything, it doesn't make you faster or stronger or more durable. All it does is help you understand. But understanding, the game suggests, is the most powerful tool of all. Each scan adds to your database of knowledge about the creatures and plants you encounter. You learn their behavioral patterns, their habitats, their role in the larger ecosystem. You discover which ones are territorial and which are merely defensive, which ones will attack unprovoked and which ones can be safely approached. This knowledge becomes your greatest asset, not because it gives you power over these creatures, but because it helps you find your place amongst them. You learn to swim with the reefbacks rather than around them. You discover that stalkers can be distracted with metal salvage while you work in their territory. And your progression through Subnautica isn't measured in levels gained or enemies defeated. It's measured in understanding accumulated, in problems solved, in the growing confidence that comes from learning to read an alien world's patterns and work within them rather than against them. You start as an intruder. You end as a participant. You begin by fighting the ocean's rules. You finish by dancing with them. The ocean never stops being dangerous, but danger, you learn, is just another variable to be understood and accounted for. Progress isn't about eliminating risk. It's about learning to navigate those risks with competence, grace, and the hard-won wisdom that comes from paying attention to things larger and more complex than yourself. Now this one might be the hardest lesson for us to learn, wrapped as we are in billions of years of evolutionary programming that interprets every unknown as a potential threat. Our brains are pattern-matching machines calibrated for a world where the rustling bush might contain a predator, where the strange sound in the night might herald death approaching on silent feet. We're designed to assume malice until proven otherwise, to treat indifference as a luxury we can't afford. But the ocean, Subnautica's vast, alien ocean, is fundamentally indifferent. It doesn't care that you're afraid. It doesn't care that you're struggling to survive in an environment your species never evolved to inhabit. It doesn't celebrate when you make mistakes or mourn when you succeed. The currents that carry you or crush you do so without preference or prejudice. The pressure that builds as you descend follows the laws of physics, not the whims of a malevolent intelligence. The creatures that hunt these waters are responding to stimuli that predate human consciousness by eons. Hunger, territory, reproduction. The simple biological imperative to continue existing. There's something profoundly liberating about truly internalizing this. When you understand that the Reaper Leviathan that just destroyed your Seamoth wasn't acting out of spite or cruelty, that it was simply following behavioral patterns encoded in its DNA across millions of years of evolution. The sting of loss transforms into something more manageable. Frustrating perhaps, disappointment, but not the deep personal hurt that comes from feeling targeted by a universe that seems determined to make you suffer. The ocean operates according to rules that exist independent of your presence or your need. Water seeks its level. Pressure increases with depth. Predators hunt in territories they've claimed through strength or inheritance. Prey animals school together for protection and scatter when threatened. These aren't personal attacks on your ambitions, they're the fundamental operations of an ecosystem that was functioning perfectly well before you arrived and will continue functioning after you're gone. But in that indifference, if you look carefully, there's a strange kind of peace. The ocean doesn't hate you, but it also doesn't love you. It simply contains you, the way it contains everything else. The peepers with their endless migrations, the reefbacks with their continent-slow journeys, the microscopic organisms that form the base of the food web you're now a part of. You're not special, but you're not excluded either. You're just another variable in an equation so complex that even the architects, with all their advanced technology and million-year perspective, couldn't fully solve. This is where Subnautica's environmental storytelling becomes more powerful. The Degassi survivors who came before you learned these same lessons, each in their own way. Bart Torgal's logs speak of gradually adapting to life on an alien world, of learning to read the patterns and find safety in understanding. Marguerite took a more aggressive approach, trying to impose her will on the environment through force and determination. Paul Torgal sought to minimize his impact, to live quietly and avoid attracting attention. Each approach taught them something different about the ocean's character. Bart learned patience and observation. Marguerite learned respect for power greater than her own. Paul learned that sometimes the kindest response to overwhelming complexity is simply to listen. But all three learned the lesson that the ocean wasn't their enemy. Even Marguerite, who fought everything from stalkers to Reaper Leviathans, came to understand that she was engaging with animals following their nature, not monsters pursuing personal vendettas. The ocean might be dangerous, but it wasn't cruel. It might be overwhelming, but it wasn't capricious. It simply was. In its indifference lies its beauty. The way thermal vents create updrafts that carry nutrients to higher levels. The way peepers carry enzyme samples throughout the ecosystem, distributing immunity to the Kahara bacterium without any conscious awareness of their role. The way even death feeds back into the system, creating energy gradients and resource concentrations that support new life. The ocean does not hate you, but that doesn't mean it's going to make anything easy for you. It just means that when you succeed, when you navigate the darkness and pressure and predators to achieve your goals, you can't attribute your victory to overcoming malice. You survived because you learned to read the rules and work within them. You thrived because you found your place in a system larger than yourself. And maybe, if you paid close enough attention, you learned that there's a profound satisfaction in being a part of something vast and ancient and indifferent. Something that doesn't need your approval or understanding to continue its work. Something that simply is, and will continue being, long after you're gone. The ocean doesn't hate you. It just asks that you learn to swim. I still remember the panic. Sometimes I'll be swimming through the kelp forests, completely at ease, scanning fragments or gathering resources, when the memory hits me like a rogue wave, the way my hands used to shake when I heard something large moving in the water nearby, the desperate mathematics of oxygen consumption and distance to surface, the terrible certainty that everything in this alien ocean wanted me dead, and I was too small, too slow, too fundamentally unsuited to this environment to survive much longer. But when I launch the game now, when that familiar blue fades in and LifePod 5 materializes around me, I'm not afraid anymore. I see the reef spreading out below me in all directions, the brain coral and the acid mushrooms, the school of peepers making their eternal migration. The gasopods drifting like living balloons through shafts of filtered sunlight. I hear the music, that haunting ambient score that somehow manages to sound both alien and achingly familiar. Like a lullaby sung in a language I'm only just learning to understand. And I breathe. Not just because I'm sitting safely in my chair, oxygen plentiful and pressure regulated, but because the ocean itself no longer feels like something that wants to steal my breath away. It feels like home, like a place I belong, even if I'll always be a visitor here. Even if I'll never be anything more than a temporary resident in an ecosystem that existed for millions of years before I arrived. The Reaper Leviathans still patrol. The Ghost Leviathan still guards the crater's edge, like sentinels at the border between the known and the unknowable. The pressure still builds as you descend, and the darkness still hides things that can end your story in seconds if you're careless or unlucky, or simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. But none of that has changed. But I have. I've learned to read the warning signs, to recognize the difference between territorial displays and genuine hunting behavior. I know when to approach and when to retreat, when to power down my vehicles and drift silently, when to use thermal vents as cover from creatures that hunt by echolocation. I've internalized the rhythm of this place. The way light filtering down from the surface marks the passage of days. The way thermal layers create invisible highways for migrating fish. The way even the most dangerous predators follow predictable patterns if you're patient enough to observe them. The ocean didn't change. I did. And maybe that's what healing feels like. Not the absence of danger, but the presence of competence. Not the elimination of fear, but the transformation of fear into something useful. Awareness, caution, the healthy respect that comes from understanding exactly what you're dealing with. Not the conquest of a hostile environment, but the gradual, careful process of finding your place within it. This is what Subnautica taught me in the end. That adaptation is possible. That the things that seem impossibly vast and frightening can become manageable through patience and observation and the willingness to accept that maybe, just maybe, you don't have to fight everything that scares you. Sometimes you can learn to swim alongside it instead. The game never promises that survival will be easy. It never suggests that the universe owes you safety or comfort, or a happy ending. What it offers instead is something more valuable. The possibility that you can learn to exist in spaces that weren't designed for you. That you can find ways to thrive in environments that don't care whether you live or die. That competence can grow from incompetence, confidence from terror, and something approaching peace from the simple act of paying attention to the world around you. I think about those 4 terrible videos sometimes. The ones I privated in shame and embarrassment. The squeaky-voiced kid with the 10 frames per second gameplay and the desperate desire to share something beautiful with a world that wasn't ready to listen. That kid was right about the ocean being beautiful. He just didn't have the words to explain why, or the skills to show it properly, or the confidence to believe that his perspective mattered. But he kept playing anyway, through the mockery and the silence and the crushing awareness of his own inadequacy. He kept diving beneath those alien waves because something in him recognized that this place, this vast, indifferent, impossibly complex ecosystem, had something important to teach. It just took a while to figure out what that lesson was. The ocean doesn't hate you. It doesn't love you either. It simply contains you, the way it contains everything else that's learned to live within its boundaries. But in that containment, if you're quiet enough and patient enough and brave enough to keep listening, you might discover something profound. You might discover that you're tougher than you thought you were, that adaptation is not only possible, but inevitable, given enough time and attention, that the things that seem designed to destroy you are usually just following rules you haven't learned yet, that fear is information wearing a disguise, and courage is what happens when you learn to trust your own growing competence. I remember the first time I finished Subnautica. I'd spent hours building bases, exploring trenches, unlocking every blueprint I could. I wasn't rushing towards the ending, I was living in that world. But eventually, the rocket was ready. I was finally leaving 4546B, and then I realized my cuttlefish wasn't coming with me. This little creature that had followed me through everything, loneliness, fear, deep sea horror, was staying behind. I sat there in my pilot seat, watching the launch sequence start, and I just started crying. I knew it was just pixels. I knew it didn't understand, but it meant something to me. It mattered. Subnautica didn't just give me a survival experience, it gave me moments of real emotional consequence. Moments that stuck with me for years. And that's what this video is, really. A thank you, a goodbye, and maybe a message in a bottle for who I used to be. The ocean is still there, waiting, still vast, still alien, still full of wonders and terrors in equal measure. But now, when I dive beneath its surface, I don't feel like an intruder anymore. I feel like I'm coming home. And maybe that's the most important thing any game can teach you. That no matter how lost you feel, no matter how hostile the environment seems, no matter how certain you are that you don't belong, adaptation is possible, growth is possible, understanding is possible. You just have to be brave enough to keep swimming. The ocean didn't change, I did. And maybe that's what healing feels like. Not erasing the fear, not pretending it was never there, but learning how to swim through it. You'll be okay. Oh, well, thank you so much for watching. I didn't think this video would be such an emotional rollercoaster, to be honest. Fuck. I'm okay. I need to do this video, just, like, for me. If you enjoyed, good. I hope you did. Make sure to like and subscribe if you did. But I don't care how this video does. It's just something I needed to make. But yeah, oh yeah, as always, I'd like to thank the channel members and the Patreons. That, of course, being The Milkman, Flapjack, Camo Cavilian, Will Provine, Reese Lunn, Aroxano, Vinicus Franca, A Brick Wall, Ice Bear, Ash Crowing, Adrian Nerium, Crit Croc, Myhara Project, and Prox. Thank you all so much for the support, and I hope that all of you did enjoy this video. If you did, then like and subscribe, and honestly, just, I hope you enjoyed. This video meant a lot to me, as you can probably tell. Got a bit emotional at the end there. And I don't care if you're like, haha, loser, you almost cried over a video you made, but brought back a lot, and I've come a long way. But yeah, that's about it. Subnautica's peak. You should all go play it if you haven't already. And if you haven't already, what the fuck are you doing? How the hell you watch a 48-minute long video of this game and you haven't even played it? Go play it right now. And I'll probably do a video on the second one when it comes out, maybe. But yeah, next video is probably going to be something completely different. I don't know if you can tell, but if you look through my catalog, every so often I do complete tonal shifts because I don't want to get bogged down into making one type of video. This was one tonal shift. Next one is going to be an even more tonal shift because I was watching my older videos and I realized that they were funnier and I want to try doing that again. So I think next video is going to be on Factorio. So hopefully I'll be able to get it out a week from now when this video goes live, which should be Friday if everything goes well. But yeah, I might get lost. You might not see me for weeks. I don't know how addictive Factorio is, but yeah. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.